There is that. Andrew, why don't you tell everybody a little bit about yourself and what you're going to talk about today?
Hello, everybody. Hello. My name's Andrew, and today I'm going to be talking about content marketing, but not just necessarily how to create content. I think everybody here has creates content. It's more to do with what happens next. How do you get that content out to people, so the distribution, and what you can get people to do about it once it's out there.
Fantastic.
So that's what I'll be talking about.
The stage is all yours.
Thank you very much.
Cheers.
Okay. So, last year, I don't know if anybody was here last year. Can I just get a show of hands? Who was here at last event? Okay, brilliant. So there's about a quarter of the room. So last year, I focused on 3 questions. I gave a talk last year, and I focused on 3 questions. And they're probably the 3 most important questions any marketer can ask at the moment when it comes to their content. And that is, what can I create? How can I get what I've created to the relevant people? And what can I get them to do? What can I create? How can I get it to the relevant people? And what can I get them to do? Or if you just want 3 words, create, distribute, convert. What I've seen over the years working in this space is that anybody who can kind of answer those 3 questions will have success when it comes to their content marketing. Since last year, there's probably been 2 major areas that I've noticed in the UK and also across Europe that's affected content marketing. Now, I wanted to actually come here and talk about. One is disrupting industries. There's been a lot of tech companies whose main focus now is to disrupt traditional industries. Now, that doesn't necessarily be a new company like the Ubers and the Alibabas. It can be old traditional companies looking at changing ways on how they do business. The second thing I've noticed is that brands are becoming publishers through content. And what I mean by that is, my background, for about 5 years, I used to work at the BBC. I used to produce radio shows at the BBC. And then I left, and in 2006, I set up the website MySpace in the UK. I was one of the guys who set that up. Who remembers MySpace? Yeah? So I was part of the team that set up MySpace. Now, the 2 things that I learned coming from the BBC to MySpace was the BBC, we were publishers. At the time, if anybody, especially in music, wanted to have a hit, you needed to go through the BBC for the radio station I was working for. It was one of the 3 or 4 gateways to success. Sounds better, no? When I went to MySpace, we were really a platform. All we were doing, essentially, was saying to people, okay, well, we've got the platform. It's up to you to make it happen. And that was the main difference. Sorry about this. I have very small ears, so it doesn't really fit. Okay. That was the main difference. And what you're finding now is a lot of brands are realizing the power of their communities and are actually starting to become publishers themselves. So a lot of brands now are becoming publishers. What I mean by that is they're starting to realize their power is not necessarily just creating communities, but by having a community, they can actually become the publisher themselves. You're starting to see a lot of brands, the likes of Nike, Dove, HubSpot, Red Bull, creating content with the idea that they eventually will create, whether it be a television channel or some of their social media profiles, and they're the ones that's going to have the power of distribution. And you're starting to see a lot of brands now actually focusing on that. And the rapper 50 Cent, I remember he was on a radio station once, and he said, "Why do I need your radio station? I have 50 million fans on Facebook." And when he said that, that's kind of when the penny dropped. That is when we went from the publishers, the traditional publishers having the power, to really the people or the brands that are using digital and content to become distributors themselves as the power. Because what you're seeing now, where before the brands would have to pay the publishers, now the publishers to some extent, are paying the brands to get their content out there and to get the name. And what you've seen over the years is the customer journey has changed. I remember yesterday somebody showed a typical sales funnel. And it usually starts here at awareness and ends with a buyer, or you might go to advocacy. But here, this one here, don't know if you can see it properly, this is kind of what it looks like now. Because people will come in at the beginning at the funnel here, but the reality is people might not necessarily see the message where you actually want. So right now, we've got an event. Now, we've got people here at the event, and this might be the traditional way people are going to hear, let's say, about Wowee message. But there might be people that will be following the hashtag. So they might not even be at the event, but they can still hear the message. So where people enter the funnel is at different places. Google called this the 0 moment of truth. And they work out there's about 14 different aspects on where people can actually hear the start of the message, the awareness. But what do you get at the end? Traditionally, you want a buyer. I want somebody to buy my product or service. But what's more important to you? Someone who buys your product or service, or somebody who tells 50 people, and out of those 50 people, 2 people will buy? Both are as important as each other. If you look at the buyer, I'm just going to break down both of them now. So if you look at the buyer, it's very simple. No attention means no money. Everybody in here is fighting for attention. And everybody in here, I'm assuming, creates content. By a show of hands, who does not have a website, a company website? So there's a couple of people. And the people who said they don't have a website, are you on Facebook or LinkedIn or Twitter or, yep, okay. So everybody in here has put something on the internet. So because of that, you're in the content or the publishers. You need to think like a content producer. You need to think like a publisher. You need to think like a broadcaster because you're fighting for attention. And everybody is fighting for attention. And earlier on, we talked about our attention span is only 8 seconds as well. So everybody in here is fighting for attention. And that could be against the traditional publishers, or that could be against that 15-year-old kid who's in his bedroom. You're competing for attention. And it's very simple. When people want to buy your product, they usually go through a number of different stages. The first thing is they need to know you. They know you through content. If you don't have content online, it's going to have to be offline. But if you're going to be online, you need to put content up there. Then they've got to like you. And once they like you, then they have to trust you. Trust, because of social media, is a very, very strong commodity. And also authenticity. And transparency. Because usually, if you trust somebody, you're going to do your research about them. And pretty much anything can be found online. So trust becomes a very big part. And once that happens, then usually they're likely to take some form of action. And that action could be anything from a like, or a connect, or a follow, to buying a potential product. So the power of content is really you're telling your stories through content. And everybody in here has a story to tell. Every brand has a story to tell. You're building your personality. You're building your tonality. Now, some of you might have just a logo. How do you build a personality when it's just the logo? One of the things I do now, I do a lot of training in this space. And one of the exercises I do, I call it the social celebrity. And it's very simple. And this is how you come up with your personality. And it's you need to let people know about your brand. So you decide to use a celebrity. Now, imagine if money was no challenge. You could have infinite budget. What celebrity would you use? And why would you choose them? Because it will dictate a lot about the type of content that you want to create and the personality that you want to develop for your brand. Because remember, they are your voice. And does your personality match your brand? So if, for example, you wanted to get yesterday there was someone who was talking about influencers. And he mentioned, I think it was a young gentleman who everybody said he's quite funny, comedic. gentleman who's doing a lot in Kuwait. So if he was the person that you'd want to tweet, then when it comes to your content, you might want to be thinking funny, might be a bit on the edge content. If you were in, say, the tech space and you wanted the likes of Steve Jobs, to say Steve Jobs would be the person, then your content needs to be focused and forward thinking. So again, this is just a very simple exercise that anybody here can do, and you can do whenever, speak to your marketing teams or yourself. Again, what celebrity would you choose? Because that essentially is the personality of your brand. And it's very simple. You either build your own audience or you leverage someone else's. That essentially is how you're going to get traffic. You build your own audience, and that is what a lot of companies are doing now. That's what really this is focused on. How are you going to build your own audience? Or you leverage someone else's, and that's advertising. What you're finding now, the companies that are doing well, they're leveraging someone else's audience to build up their own audience. And then once they've built up their own audience, they won't need to leverage other people's audience or spend as much money on other people's audiences to get them to their audience anyway. So when we look at contribution, it's simple really. And that is, you cannot control what people will say about you, but you can influence what they see. And what I mean by that is, you can't control me typing any of your names into Google and finding out some information. But what I see is up to you. So one of the things I get is, oh, how do I control all of this? You almost have to forget about control, because you can't. But you can influence what people see. So again, influence becomes a very big part in what we're doing. But really, when it comes to content, the question I really want to kind of find out is, what happens once I click publish? I create a video. A lot of people say, oh, we need to do videos. So you create a video, and then you put it on, say, YouTube, and then you click publish. Then what happens? Okay, you might send a tweet. You might put something on Facebook. Then what? And this is where a lot of people get stuck. When it comes to content marketing, a lot of people focus on the content, and content is too subjective to me. What is good content is opinion-based. What I want to know, and what I like focusing on, and what you're seeing in the next 2015, 2016, 2017, is what happens next. And that's the distribution and the conversion. Because, and I've gone to many, many conferences where they say, content is king. All you need to do is build great content. And if you can build great content, you'll be okay. But the reality is this. They won't come. Great content was, yes, 2010. But the reality is now, when it comes to your content marketing, and that is when you're putting anything out on the internet, the next stage needs to happen. And that is, how will people find my content? And there is only 3 ways people will find your content online. Be it your website, be it a new video, be it an image. There's only 3 ways people will find your content outside of advertising and going to an exact URL, i.e. www.blah-blah-blah.kw or .com. And the 3 ways are, they're either going to find it via search, they find it because somebody shared the content with them, or they found it by accident. So they either search, and that's based on keywords, share because somebody shared the content with them, or they forwarded it an email, or they've retweeted, or they found it by accident. And that is, have you ever been on YouTube and you're watching a video and it's got related videos? And then you watch another video, and then another video, and another video, and then hours later you're still on YouTube. What's happening there is you found it by accident, and you have to understand the algorithm of the platform you're using. One thing and it was mentioned yesterday in the influencer talk, what you're seeing, the trend in the market, is not necessarily saying, let's do 10 or 15 different platforms. What you're seeing now is people are doing 2 and just doing them well. They're saying, we're focusing on this, and we're going to master these 2 platforms. The thing that I would add to that are people or your customers are not brand loyal. They're friend loyal. They'll go to wherever their friends are. And again, I found out the hard way. I worked at MySpace. We became 20 million to 250 million, and we were the largest website in the world. We even overtook Google at one point. But then we lost 220 million. And because people are not loyal to the brand, they're loyal to their friends. So when it comes to what you're doing, again, I recommend that you focus on 2 platforms or 3 platforms, do it really well. But if your customers are starting to leave those platforms, don't be loyal to the platforms. One thing I've realized is that if you know how to make content, the platform does not matter. If you know how to build a community, the platform does not matter. You know how to build content, you know how to build a community. And that is the key thing when it comes to digital, because not much has changed over the years. My first job working in digital was in 2001, and I worked for Liverpool Football Club. I'm not a Liverpool supporter, by the way. They just paid well. I went with the money. But that was 2001. It is now almost 2016. Not much has really changed. Technology has changed. Our behavior has changed. But content was there then. It's just that the only content was text on the internet. Now, there's more content. But still, people still need to create the content. They still need to get it to the relevant people. And they still need them to take some form of action. So let's focus on one of them, which is the share. So I talked about search, share, and finding it by accident. So if you look at sharing, why do people share? There was a research by a company called Unruly Media, and they worked out a number of different things why people share. People share stuff that's funny. People share stuff that's just random. People share stuff that's exclusive. The whole entertainment industry is based on exclusivity. People share stuff that's unbelievable. People share stuff that's sexy, shocking, cute. If all else fails, put a cat in the video, it does well. People share stuff that's controversial and geeky. So this is something that's really changed over the years, where the geek is the new cool. The other thing to be aware, there's certain sites, I don't know if anybody knows the site BuzzSumo. If you don't, what's good about BuzzSumo is that you could put in any keyword and it tells you what people are sharing. So some of you might be thinking, okay, we are a bank. We can't create funny content, or we cannot create this, or we cannot create that. Or there might be some agencies in here that will be thinking, okay, well, that doesn't work for our client. However, sites like BuzzSumo, what it does is you can type in any keyword, and it shows you who is sharing what and on what platform. Right now, I do not believe it covers Arabic. However, I know from speaking to them, it's something that they're looking to do in the future. And there may be a platform in Arabic that looks at what people are sharing the most. So it will tell you what people, or what types of content in your industry that people are sharing the most on Twitter, or on Pinterest, or on Facebook. Now, going back to geeky, there's these 2 guys in the UK called the Slow-Mo guys. And I don't know if anyone's heard of them. But when it comes to the content they create, and they've become content producers themselves, all they do is they have a really good camera, and it's a slow-mo camera, and they just take bits of random activities, film it in slow motion, and they've created a very, very good company from what they're doing. So I'm just going to play you a video of one of them now.
All right, well, this is my favourite part of the challenge. I don't know about yours. This is a football, or a soccer ball, depending on where you're watching this, filled kind of all the way up with water, so it's got a bit more weight to it. And I'm going to throw it really hard at the side of your head.
Thanks, yeah, brilliant.
I reckon expose the teeth, and I want to see eyes wide open, just so you can get the full extent of skull movement. Ready?
Oh, God. Is that any good or not?
Yeah, it's pretty good. It's like one of those Newton's cradle things. The ball just stops dead and then your head carries on at the same speed.
That's ridiculous.
Look at this. I reckon this should be your Facebook profile picture. That'd be wicked.
What they've managed to do is they've positioned themselves as tech geeks with a camera. And what they do is they shoot all videos with a special HD high-speed cinema camera in slow motion, and they shoot various pranks and stunts. So that one obviously was football to the face. The results, they have over 322 million views. And views, because there's ads on YouTube, that means they've managed to generate revenue of almost 200,000 last year, part-time, £200,000 part-time, which is a pretty good job for a part-time job. But the key stat here is the subscribers, 3.46 million subscribers. I've worked with a lot of global brands, and I've worked with a lot of small businesses who's had success in what they're doing. Success is based on what objectives they're trying to achieve. They will all say this: the money is in the list. The money is in the list. If you have a good community, if you have a good database, that is where you're going to generate the value. Whether it be a small business like this, or whether it be a global brand. They understand the fact that by building a community of loyal people, of people who could be contributors to you, people who could be buyers to you, that is going to become very, very powerful. And where we are now in this space is something we've talked about for a number of years, but where we are now in this space, I think within the next 2 years, you're really going to see the value of your community. So it's one of the things that we really need to start doing now. Not necessarily creation of content, because I think everybody is doing that. It's understanding the distribution and understanding the conversion and building that community. Because once you have a lot of people, there's a lot of things you can do. And like I said, one of the key things that a lot of organizations or brands are doing now is going to the traditional publishers and broadcasters and saying, we're not going to spend that much money on advertising now because we don't need to. We've actually got more people in our community, targeted people, than you've got here. So maybe you should spend with us. The key takeaway in that, a brand isn't what you say it is what Google says it is, and also social media. So when it comes to the contribution, that's why it's really important, because people are going to have your say. And that's why, going back to what I was saying before about that personality, that will help. So it is still business as usual. You still need something to sell, somewhere to sell it, and someone to sell it to. All I do is take traditional business and look at it through a digital lens. Again, over the years, what I've seen working in this industry for 15 years, traditional business still works. It is not just throw out everything and we need to do this new thing because it's digital. No, it is still traditional business. All we need to do now is just look at it just through a digital lens, just to see what it looks like now. Okay? And I think that is pretty much it.
Excellent.